morning and welcome to a new edition of Panorama News. And I'm Dina Hussein. I'll be starting off with the headlines in a moment, so stay with us, the political segment. The first National Youth Conference concludes its activities in Sharm el-Sheikh. Russia's Putin says attempts to get Syria deal with US Obama thwarted. And US says up to 900 terrorists killed in Mosul battle. The first National Youth Conference concluded its activities in the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh on Thursday, witnessing a number of sessions and dialogues which tackled an array of issues and challenges facing the nation, in addition to youth visions regarding those challenges and their future aspirations. On the third and final day of the three-day conference, President al-Sisi a session on the causes of violence in stadiums and retaining spectators, and another session entitled The Ideal Model of the Egyptian State, on the importance of preparing the youth to lead the future. The detail.
On the third and final day of the first National Youth Conference in Sharm el-Sheikh, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi took part in a session on the causes of violence in stadiums and retaining spectators. Addressing the session, President al-Sisi there is a sect among the Egyptians which intends to hinder the country's development track and to ignite the youth emotions. The president called for the community to find non-traditional solutions to the problems facing the nation, noting that the state is adopting the policy of self-constraint to end any tension. The president also participated in a session entitled The Ideal Model of the Egyptian State with Prime Minister Sharif Ismail and Minister of International Cooperation Dr. Sahar Nasr attending the session. President al-Sisi highlighted the importance of grooming the youth to lead the future, stressing that Egypt is in need for speedy work and development. The head of state reiterated the significance of a monthly youth convention for the benefits of such experience and said that it is important to show people there is non-centralization of power. During the session, the Minister of Investment reviewed the strategic track of economic development and the mechanisms of achieving the highest growth rate, making benefit of the available resources. The minister suggested constructing an Arab industrial fund where the Arab countries are supposed to finance the foreign currency part of projects held in Egypt. For their parts, the Minister of Electricity stressed the importance of expanding the renewable energy projects, and the Minister of Irrigation had reviewed his ministry's vision to solve the Ethiopian Renaissance Dam's crisis diplomatically. Earlier, President al-Sisi called for all media outlets to be accurate in dealing with news and reports related to external and internal affairs. In a forum on the media impact on the public opinion of youth on the sidelines of the youth conference, he stressed that the country is keen on maintaining the independence of all media outlets. During a session on the role of political parties, the president called on leaders of political parties to encourage youth to participate in the political life with the aim of enriching the national action.
The Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abul Ghait warned on Thursday against the ongoing atrocities of the Israeli occupation forces and plundering the water resources in Palestinian, Syrian and Lebanese lands, defying the international law and charters on the Arab water rights. In his address during the inauguration session of the Conference of Arab Water Under Occupation at the Arab League, Abul Ghait said the Pan-Arab body is hosting the conference due to the importance of the water issue on the international agenda as part of the sustainable development and climate change. The Arab League chief also called for securing water resources for the Palestinian people. Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Thursday that his attempts to reach an agreement with the US President Barack Obama on ending the bloodshed in Syria had not worked out. On the ground, at least 6 children were killed and 15 others injured in the rebel rocket attacks in the government held west of Aleppo city. The details in the following report.
Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Thursday his attempts to reach an agreement with U.S. President Barack Obama on ending the bloodshed in Syria had not worked out, adding that a united front to defeat terrorism had in fact not been created. In Syria, at least 6 children were killed and 15 injured in rebel rocket attacks in the west of Aleppo city. A monitoring group said a child was also among at least 8 people killed in government shelling on the rebel-held town of Douma outside Damascus. In France, French Foreign Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault said earlier that Russia or the Syrian government were responsible for an airstrike on Syria's Idlib province that led to the deaths of 26 civilians. Russia earlier said it was not responsible for the attack on Idlib. The United Nations vowed to press ahead on securing medical evacuations of hundreds of sick and wounded from the Syrian city of Aleppo and demanded that warring sides drop their conditions. It said the Syrian government had rejected a UN request to deliver aid to rebel-held eastern Aleppo and East Ghouta near Damascus as part of its plan for November. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said the military operation supporting Syrian opposition fighters in northern Syria will target the Daesh-held city of Raqqa. Erdogan said the rebels were now advancing on the important city of El-Bab to clear Daesh elements. He said Turkey would not allow the northern Iraqi district of Sinjar to become a new Kandil, referring to the mountainous area in Iraq's north where the PKK has bases. Meanwhile, EU governments put 10 more people under sanctions over the crisis in Syria, targeting high-ranking military officials and senior figures linked to President Bashar al-Assad. More than 300,000 people have been killed in Syria since the conflict began in March 2011 with anti-government protests.
The U.S. said Thursday that up to 900 Daesh group terrorists have been killed in the offensive to retake Iraq's Mosul, as camps around the city filled with fleeing civilians. Iraqis who fled their homes expressed joy at escaping Daesh's brutal rule as they were given shelter and assistance, in some cases reuniting with their relatives that they haven't seen more than 2 years. The offensive launched on October 17th is seeing tens of thousands of Iraqi fighters advancing on Mosul from southeast and north in a bid to retake the last major Iraqi city under Daesh control. Back to the air and ground support from U.S.-led coalition federal forces allied with Kurdish Peshmerga fighters have taken a string of towns and villages, but steady advance. And a UN peace proposal to end the 19-month war in Yemen appears aimed at sidelining exiled President Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi and setting up a government of less divisive figures. Hadi fled the armed advance of the Iranian allied Houthi movement in March 2015 and has been a guest of neighboring Saudi Arabia ever since. A UN Security Council resolution a month later recognized him as the legitimate head of state and called on the Houthis to disarm and quit Yemen's main cities. The latest peace plan submitted by UN envoy Ismail Wald Sheikh Ahmed suggested Ahmar would step down and Hadi would agree to become little more than figurehead after a Houthi withdrawal from the capital Sana'a. Special forces from China and Saudi Arabia have held their first joint anti-terrorism drills, state media reported on Thursday. China's latest effort to expand security ties with countries in the Middle East. The Chinese say its companies and citizens face a growing threat from terrorism as its global footprint expands, and the government has been getting more involved diplomatically in trouble spots in areas such as the Middle East. Chinese President Xi Jinping visited Saudi Arabia earlier this year, vowing to expand security cooperation and oppose terrorism. 25 people from each side took part in training over 2 weeks from October 10th, focused on anti-terrorism combat skills and tactics near China's southwestern city of Chongqing. And the Libyan Navy said Thursday that almost 100 migrants were missing after their Europe-bound boat sank off the country's coast, while 29 others were rescued. General Ayub Qasim, a Navy spokesman in Tripoli, quoted the survivor as telling his rescuers that the boat had set off with 126 migrants on board from Gorbuli and went down battered by high waves. He added that 3 women and a child were among the 97 missing. The UN says the perilous journey across the Mediterranean for migrants desperate to reach Europe has so far this year claimed more than 3,800 lives, a record. And bulldozers cleared mounds of debris and tore down makeshift shelters at the jungle migrant camp on Thursday. And authorities said 6,000 people had been evacuated from the squalid site. Charities said, however, hundreds of migrants might have fled the camp rather than take part in a government program to rehouse them across the country. The jungle, a ramshackle, overcrowded shanty town, came to symbolize Europe's difficulty in dealing with record influx of migrants from impoverished and war-torn regions of Africa, the Middle East and Asia. Many of them bent on crossing the sea from Calais to Britain. French President François Hollande, facing an election 6 months from now, decided under local pressure to close the jungle and relocate its inhabitants in towns and villages throughout the country, pending examination of their cases. Police patrolled the camp and other parts of Calais, where dozens of migrants were wandering. And Turkey seeking an end to NATO's counter-migration mission in the Aegean Sea, and it is telling the US-led allies that the sharp drop in refugees trying to get to Greece means there is no longer a need for warships to patrol its coast. Turkish Defense Minister Fikri Ishak said other NATO defense ministers on Wednesday that Ankara no longer saw a need for the mission to continue beyond the end of December. And that's according to 2 people briefed on the exchanges, despite strong support across the alliance for the mission. The uncompromising stance came as NATO prepares to have a separate EU migrant maritime mission off Libya's coast, to which Turkey will send ships and planes to carry out air and sea patrols of traffickers, sending refugees towards Italy. And diplomats say Turkey is unhappy with NATO ships moving about in waters that Turkey and Greece have long contested, and is worried that Greece could gain the upper hand in a dispute about a group of islets in the Aegean Sea. Turkish police detained 45 Air Force pilots and were to take a dozen more on Thursday in the latest in a stream of police operations relating to investigations into a failed attempt by rogue military in July. The operation, targeting suspected followers of US-based cleric Fethullah Gulen,